Hello, everybody. We're back. We're back after a little hiatus here. So this Saturday, September 28th, and we're here with our new issue. And the thing is, when we're gone, the world just still keeps turning, and things pile up, and things happen. So we have a lot that we want to share with you today. And first of all, so we're going to have a structure of national, state, and local. So you can follow along on that. And yeah, so everything was going along, and we are. I'm Consuelo Lara. And
I'm Madeline Kronenberg,
who was on vacation, and she's going to tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I have been on vacation. I had a wonderful trip through the national parks. I went to see Yellowstone National Park, which is more spectacular than you could ever expect it to be, and Mount Rushmore and the Grand Tetons and the Crazy Horse Monument. There's so many incredibly wonderful things throughout Montana and Wyoming and Idaho and Utah. And after that trip, I went and visited my sister, who works for the government, and her agency had Family Day last week, and it was in Washington, D.C., which has also been very busy this week with all of the impeachment information and issues that have come up. But we were there right before the activities started around that. But I did want to start our share out here for us with what is going on in Washington. And in Washington right now, there's really an incredible disconnect between where we are with the folks in Washington and the needs of our children in our local school districts. So in particular, this always comes down to the same thing. It comes down to funding. So I'm going to read you something from a website called educationvotes.nea.org. And so this is sponsored by the National Education Association, the National Teachers Union. And they have put together something called Education Votes, which I think is a really important thing. That it's really time to do that. They're very proactive. And all of the teacher demonstrations, all of these things are coming together and Education Votes is part of that. So here's what they're saying. This has got to do with the budget. In June, the House, this is the National House of Representatives, passed a fiscal 2020 funding bill with an $11.8 billion increase for labor, health, and human services and education. Title I, which supports schools serving large numbers of low-income students, and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, both received $1 billion increases. Funding for Title II, which helps states and districts recruit, prepare, and train teachers, was increased by $500 million. In addition, the House, and remember the House, of course, is Democratic. The House bill doubled funding for full-service community schools, a program which supports schools designed to help solve problems faced by students in low-income, low-opportunity neighborhoods. Under the House plan, $40 million is dedicated to community schools, more than double the amount the program receives now, which is $17.5 million. This is something that we have used here. It's something that really serves the most vulnerable and needy children throughout the United States. It's an incredibly important program. It works. It puts people into the schools to help serve family needs, to bring counseling into families that otherwise would never have it. It allows the school to be the true hub of the community. Community schools are an important part of our education system. So now, in contrast, our Senate, our Republican Senate, released its recommendation earlier this month to essentially freeze critical formula-funded programs, including Title I, Title II, and IDEA, which is the disabilities program, at last year's level. The Senate increased charter school funding by $20 million and completely eliminated funding for full-service community schools. It's unconscionable. It's just an incredible thing that is what they've done. The Trump administration budget, with the full support of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, also zeroed out the community schools program for fiscal year 20 while requesting more than $40 million for charter schools. That's worth examining. So what we need to do is write our...
Imagine a school where students have all the resources
I'd love
they
to do
need.
that.
A school where caring,
I think what I have done...
educators inspire them to be leaders, innovators, pioneers.
I can't figure out what I just did.
A school where students are supported.
Oh. Okay, I pushed a button and put on a video on my phone which explains community schools. So I'm going to put the video onto our list of resources at the bottom of this YouTube, in the YouTube description. But what that is that it simply tells the story. National Education has created an animated video that explains community schools and how important they are. And what we need to do is contact our senators and our representatives and make sure they lobby for funding for community schools. And I'll put the link in to do that as well. And I'll also put something, if you're watching this on Facebook, I'll put a link in the Facebook in case you don't watch it on the YouTube channel. But most of the links are in the YouTube description. So that's the most important thing right now. I think if we don't save community schools, it's yet another hit that we're going to talk about budgets later, that we don't anticipate.
And it affects a lot of our schools in our district. We are one of the people that uses those. We've seen the effects it has. We reach out to parents. I mean, I just can't imagine us not having it. Our children are so vulnerable and have so many needs. And it just, I just can't imagine it. And especially places like, Helms Middle School, where I was for many years, and Community in Schools program was wonderful. It's like a godsend. It really is something that our students need. So the idea of eliminating it, I can't believe the heartless people who would do such a thing.
It's an incredible thing, right?
And then give the money to charters. That explains to you right there where the values are, and that the charters are really a business model, and that it doesn't matter if you dismantle public education and our most vulnerable children. That's where they're coming from.
And it is at their expense, right? Every school in our school district is not a full-service community school because the need is not at every school. We are just like every other school district in the United States. We have more affluent communities and less affluent communities, low opportunity communities as they're now labeling them, that need the additional support. So the people who don't need that support it's invisible to them that this is lost. They're not going to know, and they're not going to know to fight for it because they never even knew that it existed.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we're hoping to do here, is to have you know, so that you can then make the case for full-service community schools and the continued funding and support of them by our federal government.
That's our call to action. Federal. Yeah.
And then there's the statewide.
Statewide.
Right. So we had lots of success in the state, right, with which we've talked about a great deal here. 1505 and 1507, the assembly bills that were written to basically control the charter industry in California.
Yes. And they've been passed and signed, and so now we're in the process of implementing them. What does this mean for our districts? And what does it mean for the charter schools that are still out there, want to expand, want to increase? And so we need to put these into action, and what that looks like. So that's really important at this stage. We have Making Waves is trying to expand in Pinole, actually, and they have a system. They have a way of going through the cities first and getting, they've bought the property already. We understand all of this is public, but yet it's public, but yet not a lot of people know about it. And then they come to the district, and what we're going to do is let you know how much we're already in a deficit. West Contra Costa Unified School District, again, not a secret. And something like this will affect us even more. What does it mean? Will it then put us into receivership? How close then are we going to get to that? And then making the case that since we can take financial impact into consideration, these charter industry needs to understand that they're probably not going to be able to expand.
Right. That
we're
we're saturated. That was the word that was in the legislation and in the task force report, right? And once a district is saturated, which means we can't afford to lose any more children by deliberately opening a competitor really within our district limits. So what we're hoping is that through the implementation, what would happen is the folks that make that decision, which could be the county, could be the state, would simply come out and say, here's the list of districts that have reached that saturation point, so that the charter school industry would know that these are districts that are not eligible for them to expand into.
Exactly. Yeah. So that could come from the state. Could also come from the county.
Come from the county,
offices.
and so then it would be public information.
Yes.
It would be simple enough because it is driven by each budget.
Yes.
And you could do a different one every year, because if however you wanted to do it.
Our superintendent could also put one out that this is the state of where we are and how we are already saturated. And so so each of those, they just need to know, no, you can't submit anymore because you're going to be denied.
You would go to districts that are not saturated.
We have plenty of districts that are not saturated. Go there.
That's right. And that's where you would be eligible to expand.
Perfect. Yes.
That's what we're hoping will happen. And then we're not going to wind up having to litigate things and having to go through any more of an expensive process around this. Let's just make it very clear. A bill was passed. It has parameters. We just need to apply the parameters statewide. And I think if we're able to successfully do that, it will make it easier on everybody. People don't start spinning their wheels and trying to do something that ultimately is not going to be successful. And we don't all spend a lot of time making a lot of lawyers very rich.
Exactly. That's who gets rich, for sure.
Because that's all that would happen in this. So
that's our state.
That's
level.
our state. And then tell us about our local budget. You had a very interesting budget meeting.
Yeah, we have a new budget person, Tony Wold, and so we had our first presentation from him concerning the budget, and it was very lengthy. And it's an interesting thing where we are in this deficit for sure. That much we know. But there are still so many unanswered questions. I think the presentation itself was very complete and thorough. It helped us understand all the contributing factors, where the money comes from, where it goes, the increases, etc. But it still doesn't tell us, how did we get here? How did we get into this? And it also does not include anything like a plan, which he did say is not, there yet. But we still need to go back. Like, for instance, one page in there says we don't want to look back. That's not the direction we're going. But really, you need to go back. I mean, you're going to repeat yourself if you don't know what the mistakes were made in the past. So that's... Our labor unions came up with some very, very good questions, and I'm hoping that time will be made where specific answers to those will be documented and shared. I think that would be very helpful. Mm-hmm. And, you were in the district on the board for many years, so you have some insight as well about all this.
So for me, I was on the board when the budget was approved at the beginning of last year. right, for 18-19. And what seems to have happened is that the parameters of that budget that was approved a year ago were not followed. And essentially, this is not hard. This is the thing. This is not complicated. It's a famous line. It's not rocket science. This is adding and subtracting. This is all this is. And what we did was overspend in a number of budgets. That's what happened. There wasn't there were no big surprises in the revenue part of the budget, because we knew that what the STRS cuts were going to be. We knew for years. Those numbers have been given to us, and we've had the projections around all of those numbers. We had the numbers on OPEB. There were no surprises there. So there is no story to be told there. The story is who overspent and why, and how, and what is the process that will be put into place to keep that overspending from happening. While I was on the board, we purchased the Tyler Transparency Tool, which the purpose of which, and it's right there on the front of the website, the purpose is to allow everyone in the community to have complete trust in our ability, the district's ability to maintain a balanced budget and to be open and transparent with how all spending is happening. And somehow it didn't exercise the control, so that I'm sure all the spending is there. I'm presuming it's there. But what happened is you didn't get locked out of your account once you hit your budget maximum. And that's really what we needed to have happen. So that the accounts that overspent, the question is, how did that happen? Why did that happen? And how can we make sure that that overspending will not happen again? That's the question. That's
Right.
the story that
That's
you
the
want to hear.
story. Yeah, some people were objected to using the word story because stories are usually made up. And so, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. It doesn't imply very much fact and reality. So, and another statement that was made was, we knew this 5 years ago. People knew these
Yeah,
projections
all of
5
it,
years.
that's-
So why wasn't it something put into place? Like you said, things were frozen, and then there's still a lot of questions about what happened and what's preventing what happened then happening in the future. Those are the things we want to know.
Right. We
That's-
want to know the controls.
The
right?
controls.
And honestly, when I did watch the meeting, at the end of the meeting, Mr. Pattis referred to that fact, and that there are many, certainly our district is a leader now in establishing controls in our bond program, the facilities program. And so some similar set of controls have to be put into the operations. And apparently they don't exist right now. And I know that Mr. Duffy said he was going to meet with all of the managers and go over the budgets, but more than that, there has to be some outside control so that they know when they get up. I mean, this extra money that was spent on travel and conferences, for example, right? That seems like before you cut people's jobs, that maybe somebody's not going to go to a conference.
Yeah. And there's a lot of blaming, oh, well, you shouldn't have given the raises and all of this.
Nothing
So
to do
there's
with that. The
plenty of-
raises were always factored in.
Yeah.
So
And
this was not,
no,
this isn't
that's
the
not
raises.
the issue. So, this is an ongoing thing, and we will keep everybody updated.
Well,
for
it'll
sure.
be, that's right. And so the answer now is how this is brought out to the community. If the district is going to be asking the community for additional support, they're going to need, which means an additional bond measure, an additional parcel tax, which is part of a conversation that's been held at the board level. They're going to need to be crystal clear on what those controls are, and that the community members who have been following the district for any number of years and have looked at the Tyler Transparency Tool can trust it. So that when you're looking at it, you know if something's starting to be overspent and that there is a conversation about that at the board level. That's what didn't happen. And that is why, I mean, when I watched the meeting, I could see that Ms. Cuevas was discussing just this point, because she felt betrayed by the system, and she said it.
Yeah, exactly. And what I do like about it, he mentioned that at every board meeting, we're going to have an update. But our request is, whatever that presentation is going to be, that we are able to access it as an attachment.
That's another thing.
Before, because we weren't able to do that with
That
this.
was a big, yeah.
So it was a surprise. Here's your.
It was a big mistake.
Yeah, because we need to be able to prepare, and the public, to go over it, make their public comments, so that that's the transparency piece.
That's right.
That's what you have to do.
And that's what the Brown Act demands.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was one thing that I do hope that the district, that everybody understands. If you have a piece of information that, oh, well, I couldn't finish it, well, then put in a page saying, I'll fill this information won't be available until right before the board meeting. I'll add that in during the board meeting. Just put in a page that says that. But don't fail to put all your presentations in when you upload the whole thing, so that people who are looking at it on Friday can see everything. I mean, it's really unfair not to do that, and it's a reason to build distrust.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just looks like you're trying to hide something.
And it was brought up by Mr. Wold that the number one issue is trust. So that's we've got to work on.
He really does need to do that. He needs to just, now that he's told the story in version A, version B needs to be, these are the real specifics of where this was a story of overspending. It wasn't a story of anything other than that. It was a story of overspending. It wasn't that there was a magic different number that came in. The number that came in was the number they expected to come in. The problem was how much went out.
Exactly.
And that's what we have to just focus on, get to that and say how it is. We're going to make sure that won't happen again.
So we'll bring that up in each of our episodes
Yes,
as well.
We'll
give you an update.
And if anybody knows best practices around that, you can certainly contact us. You can comment on Facebook or on YouTube, or contact either of us. We're very easy to find. You can, on our Facebook page, we've got links to our own websites, and we're not. We're
our platform, but you can consider this your platform as well. We'll share. We want input from the public as well.
Right.
So.
And there are other, I know the other thing is that there are a lot of people who may be watching us who are from other districts. And if your district has a good solution to this, and you've got some suggestions, please feel free to let us know. Because we really do want to share. This is an opportunity to share best practices in financing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So as much as we want to talk more and more about pedagogy and things that are wonderful things that are happening in our classrooms, if you can't pay for them, your role as a steward is not fulfilled, and that's why we always keep coming back to money.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, there's a couple of little things I want to mention. I'm on the CBOC, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and I had mentioned at a board meeting about that committee being, I believe I might have said, dysfunctional and toxic. And it was because of an experience that I had there. And so in order to give that context, I am alluding to the meeting of July the 25th. And there is a way you can go into the website and download, link onto the CBOC meetings and click on the recording. They're not video tape, but they're recordings. And you can listen for yourself and see if you agree with me or not. I am going to also put that link on my own Facebook page, because I would also like the board, since the board oversees the CBOC, that we discuss it and talk about it, because I think I don't know, code of conduct, let's say, behaviors, I think all of that is very important. We have policies about behavior and conduct and non-bullying, things like that. So I would just like us to give it some discussion, that's all. So I wanted to make that clear that there was a reason why I said that. If you want to find out more, then you'll be able to go onto that link and see. So that's what that's about. The other, I wanted to share something positive. Yesterday, my friend Genoveva Calloway and I have been mentoring girls at Richmond High School. Now we're starting our 4th year. And we did a new event with the Law Academy. And we requested some girls who were pretty serious about wanting to enter into the field of law. And then we invited practicing attorney and also law students from Berkeley. It used to be Bolt, but now it's Berkeley Law. And just brought them together so that they could talk to others who are in the field, who are studying, and what does it mean? What does it mean to be a lawyer, and a Latina lawyer? And it was more than I could have dreamed of in terms of how our pathways can elevate the students' knowledge about a career and mentor, provide that support. I mean, it's just the beginning. So it was a lot of fun. So I just wanted to share that.
And that was the beginning of our CTE conversation, right? So this was the mentorship in the Law Academy is something we want to make sure it's existed in different ways in the past, but that we want to make sure continues and broadens throughout the district in the future. And the CTE is career technical education, and it's a major part of the roadmap and of the work of West Contra Costa School District for the last 10 years at least, more than that, probably. And there's going to be a presentation at the next board meeting on it. And so we will follow it closely. It's another really important issue, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening in West Contra Costa around CTE. And also, those of you who are listening who work in CTE programs throughout the state, if you want to share what's going on with you or the experiences that you've had in the past or growing your CTE program, we would love to hear that as well.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Well, that's it for us this week. I am going to take another trip. So we'll be gone. But we'll be back. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm so happy to be back and also to be able to do some traveling so I can sort of broaden my own perspective on so many things. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy birthday, Madeline.
Happy birthday, Madeline. And Carlos.
And Carlos.
Happy birthday, me.
Yes.